Welcome. Our next topic is about DTD entities. So, what is a DTD entity? So, DTD entity is nothing but it's a path which is used to define the shortcuts for using the particular text or characters. So, this particular entity will be used in our XML in order to create some shortcuts. Shortcuts in the sense, consider if you want to type a particular text or some special characters, you need not type them. Instead of them, you can just create a shortcut for them. And if you use those shortcuts in your programs, automatically the particular text or character which you need will be displayed. So these entities are created in XML with the help of DTD. That is the reason it is known as DTD entities. And DTD entities are mainly used to reduce the entry of repetitive information. So this particular DTD entities will be useful in order to avoid the information that are repeated again and again, and it also allows the user to edit the contents easily. The DTD entities are divided into two major parts. The first one is built-in entities and the second one is general entities. Built-in entities. As the name states, built-in entities are nothing but the entities which are predefined. So built-in entities are nothing but the entities which are predefined, which can be used anywhere in the document. So that if predefined entities which are present inside the XML are known as built-in entities. And these built-in entities must be used by prefixing the entity name. So entity name can be anything, whatever the name that the things which the lesser symbols or any other special characters can be included. Those are known as entity names, and this particular entity name must be prefixed with an ampersand and suffixed with a semicolon, and it looks like this. So you can notice, consider if I need an ampersand character, then I need to use the built-in entity as ampersand AMP semicolon. If I need a lesser than character, instead of directly using the lesser than character, I can use the built-in entities ampersand LT semicolon. Similarly for greater than, apostrophe and quotations. General entities. General entities are nothing but the entities which are defined by the user himself. Instead of using the built-in entities, the user can create his or her own entities. The general entities can be divided into two major parts: internal entity and external entity. So what is an internal entity? Internal entity is a method of creating the entity reference within the XML document. If you create an entity reference within XML document, it is known as internal entity, and the syntax will look like this: entity and then entity name. Entity name here is not a predefined one, it is a user defined. Whatever the name which you want to give, you can provide at that particular place. And entity value is nothing but the value which must be replaced when that particular entity name is used inside your file. And external entity is nothing but the method of creating the entity reference outside the XML document is known as external entity. And the syntax for creating external entity will be like this: entity, entity name, and then system which we have already used it before. System in the sense, it is a standalone entity which will be useful only in this particular system. And after that, the URI states for the uniform resource indicator, which is used to specify the name of the XML file. So earlier we used this in place of external DTD, so here I am going to use in place of external entity. So this particular URI will tell where is my external entity file present inside my system. So about this we'll see an example so that we'll get a better understanding. Fine. Now we'll see a example for our DTD entities. So we'll just open the file, right click, edit with Notepad++, and here you can see this particular coding. As you know, this is an XML version. That's the reason we are using XML version 1.0. And then doc type is the declaration. This is the internal DTD, which you already know. So college is my root element. College root element has a child element, which is the student, and this particular student is given an element type as any, which means that it is an unrestricted element. So there is no restrictions for usage of that particular element, so the parser will not take care of that. And then entity, I'm declaring an entity. Just note that point very carefully. I'm using an entity, and sample underscore string is my entity name. It can be anything, but I'm using here sample underscore string, and the value which I gave for that particular entity is known as internal entity within the double quotes. Now, and then this external entity is nothing but again the same entity. Sample underscore entity is my entity name. System, which is used to tell this particular entity belongs to only one particular system. It is not distributed in nature. And then within the double quotes I specify the URI. URI is nothing but the XML file where it is located in my system. So I specified the file name. So the file name is nothing but DTD EXENT. It is not necessary that you have to use the same file name. It is your wish. So I'll just open that particular file. If I open this particular file, you can notice that point student1 is my tag name. Inside that tag name I have another tag which is known as name, and just wrote inside that as known as external entity. So inside this particular external entity I have the root element as student1, which has a child element which is known as test1, and this particular test underscore 1 has a child which is known as name, and this particular name, sorry, I need to specify here name. So now you can notice that student1 is my root element, name is my child element. Inside that name I specified as species data, which means that it's a plain character data. This we already know, which we are seeing plenty of time. So here please note this point very carefully. So inside my student child element I just specified ampersand sample underscore entity semicolon. So when I specify like this, automatically my particular external entity will be called and external entity text will be displayed, and ampersand sample underscore string semicolon I have written here. It is nothing but the internal entity. Here this will get called. After this gets called, the text which is present inside that entity, that is the internal entity, will get displayed. Now I'll just open this in my browser. Right click, validate XML. This validation successful, and you can notice that name external entity. I didn't specify external entity. Please note that point. In my DTD ent.xml file I didn't specify anything. I just specified my particular entity names. That's it. That's ampersand test underscore sample underscore entity and sample underscore string, but I didn't specify external entity or internal entity. But even though I got that, the reason is this is a shortcut to specify your entity names. I hope so you understood this. Now let's get back to the slides. Fine. Our next topic is about XML namespaces. As the name itself states, it is used to provide a namespace. What is a namespace? XML namespace provide a method to avoid element name conflicts. Consider in a particular document there can be two tags with the same name. doing two different purposes. At that particular point of time, when you use the same tag in XML, already you know XML is a case sensitive language. But this particular XML case sensitive language must be able to create two same tags but doing two different purposes. In order to accomplish that particular thing, we are using XML namespaces. Why we need to use that? Consider if you create an XML document by using the same tag name, then an error arises, because when XML is embedded with HTML, these problems arises. I'll show you how. So as I said, there is a possibility having exactly the same name as in a separate XML or HTML file. In order to resolve these problems, as I said, namespaces are used. And the syntax is prefix colon element underscore name space XMLNS. XMLNS is a short form or the keyword we can say that is used in the syntax in order to tell our namespace. Colon prefix equivalents to URI. So when I show an example, you will be able to better understand that. So but before that, I'm going to just say what is the meaning of XMLNS and other things. So XMLNS is an attribute which is used to notify an XML processor that a namespace is being declared. Consider if you don't use this XMLNS, your parser or your XML processor will not be known about that particular namespace attribute. Only if you use XMLNS attribute, your parser or processor is able to know that there is a namespace being declared. And already you know this particular prefix is a shorthand notation for the namespace declared. We need not use often the the namespace name. Instead of that, we can use just this prefix. And this namespaces can be declared in two different ways: default declaration and explicit declaration. What is a default declaration? If you declare a namespace without using a prefix, it is known as the default declaration. Then if you declare a namespace by using a prefix, it is known as an explicit declaration. But most of the time we are going to use only the explicit declaration. So before going into our next particular topic, we'll see an example for this XML namespace. Okay, now we'll see an example for our XML namespaces. So this is a HTML file. Please note it, this is not an XML file. Now I'm going to show you how we can integrate XML with HTML. If we integrate, how namespaces are useful in that. So when I open this particular code, as you can see, this is my HTML code tag head section, and inside the head section I specified title. This you already know that. Inside the body section I just wrote a h1 tag that is known as XML namespaces, and you can notice this particular tag which is known as the XML namespaces, and in that nm is nothing but the prefix, and you'll be having a doubt whether the prefix have to be used often, which is as nm itself. No, it is your wish. The prefix can be changed by the user according to his or her own requirements. So here I specified nm colon college. College is my root element, consider, and then XMLNS is the namespace attribute, and then colon prefix. Prefix is my nm equivalents to URI. URI is nothing but any particular place you can specify. I specify just a sample thing, www.abc.com, some website, but please don't misunderstand that this particular namespace will be linked to the website and other things. No, it will not get linked. The reason we are specifying this particular URI is that I'm just saying that this particular college root element belongs to this particular URI. And then inside the college element I created one more child element, that is a title. Inside the title I just wrote my XML. Now you must note one point very clearly. In this particular HTML document there are two title tags. This is what I've said. In this HTML document there are two title tags. Now I'll run this program. Now when I run this program, it says XML namespaces my XML. It means that the program is running no problem. It doesn't say any error. Now I'm removing this nm here. Now you note this point. Now what will be my output? I'll again refresh this. As you can see that my XML is being disappeared. The reason is both these title tags are being conflicted. In order to avoid that particular conflict only, I'm using this nm colon. So consider in a class there are two students with the same name. In order to avoid the conflict, what we'll do, we'll call them by their initials. The same manner here, instead of using initials, I'm using some namespaces. That's all. So namespaces are mostly used in XML document or HTML document in order to avoid the name conflicts among the tags. I hope so you have understood this. Now let's get back to the slides. Fine. Now we came to the end of the video. Now let's take a break. We'll meet in the next video. But in this particular video we have seen about the DTD entities and namespaces. I hope so you have understood this. Thank you.